All right, I have this ASSA Twin Combi 4800. 4800 means it has 5 chambers on the side, but only 3 are populated with side pins, and it has 6 pins along the top. And what's interesting about this lock is that the driver pins up there are tree drivers. There's matching countermilling on the plug that the spools on the trees can go into, and we'll take a look at those after. They're pretty interesting. For this, I figured I'd do something a little bit different. I have this set of Rytan picks, which are pretty popular, I believe, with locksmiths because they come with a lot of rakes and whatnot. However, the tensioners it comes with are bottom of keyway, there's no top of keyway, and they're kind of flimsy. So I'm going to supplement that with this top of keyway set I got off Aliexpress for less than $4 shipped. Some people, I think, say they get it for as low as $1.50. So it's very cheap, and they're laser etched with this nice little width indicator. So this is 1.2 millimeter, the one I'm going to use, but there's 6 in total in there. And one thing to say about these Rytan picks is they're thicker than what I'm used to using. So these, I believe, are 23 thousandths of an inch, and the ones I use from Jimmy Long's are only 18 thousandths of an inch. So it's thicker, and what's going to happen is in some keyways it's not going to fit, but I think like 23 is okay for most. In this particular keyway, when I go on the pins, it does rub a bit against the warding, and that's going to rob me of some of my feedback. But you might be just looking to get into picking and looking at an Amazon kit like this, which seems really nice for the price, but this I measured at 34 thousandths of an inch. So they're half again in width as one of these Rytans. So when I try to use one of these in here, a lot of times I can't even get to the pins. What this will require me to do is move my way, instead of working on the bottom, up in the warding, and maybe go at an angle like this to get to the pins. And if I need to lift one really high, I'm going to have to snake my pick up the warding like that. So it's going to add a degree of difficulty, and it's going to rob me of all feedback when I'm trying to feel for jiggle testing. So this, while nice because it's thick, so for a newcomer they might not break it as often. Not that you should ever be breaking picks anyways as a newcomer, because there's only a certain amount of pressure you're going to put to lift a pin. It's very little. So there's no reason to push hard, likely pushing against warding and bending or breaking your pick. So while that might be thought of as a plus, you're making it a little bit more difficult on yourself. And if you're just getting into picking, you probably want to remove any difficulties you can so that you can learn how to pick the lock rather than learning how to fight your tools. So if you can't get a hold of Jimmy Long's because they're sold out frequently, and they're probably cheaper than this Amazon kit, there are plenty of other pick makers out there that are definitely worthwhile to check out. So I'll go ahead and give this a try. We'll start with the top pins. I'm going to put some tension with this top of keyway, and we'll start from the beginning. We're looking for the binders to push on, and the first one's already binding. Little click out of that. Second pin, loose. So it's loose, so I'm not going to push on it. I'm looking for the ones that aren't moving. Third pin, fourth pin. Fourth pin seems to be binding. Got a little click out of it, but now it's not. I'm all the way back 6. So one of the things is, if you lose track of which pin you're on, it doesn't really matter as long as you're using this jiggle method, because you just push the one that's binding. It doesn't really matter if it's the 6th pin or the 3rd pin. You just look for the one that's binding, and you push on that one. So this 4th pin here, little click out of it. 3rd pin, click out of that. Let's go back to the front. First pin's way up high, but it seems to be jiggling. Goes back to the back again. 6. Click out of that. So it's jiggling now. 5's jiggling. 4. 4. Little click out of that. Just go back to back again. Just see. 6. Definitely a lot of wiggle out of 6. 5, 4, 3. Oh, all right. Let's look at some of these side pins. So, for the side pins, I have this Multipick number MP10. It's a flag, and it's just in a custom handle, but you can use the Multipick handle. It's fine. or any other flag for that matter. The thing about this is it's fairly short, and that helps get under these pins. Now, you would go under a pin and find the binder, and what I do is you need to rotate these the proper way as well, so they either have to go towards the back, neutral, or towards the front. And what I do is I'll find the binder, I'll lift up on it until it either drops into its gate, because there's no false gate. But if it doesn't drop to a gate and I get all the way to the top, then I let off tension, let that pin drop, and then I'll, let's say, push it, and then I'll try it again. If it doesn't go, then I'll let it drop. I'll pull it all the way forward, and then I'll set it, right? Because there's only 3 possible rotations. And then I'll repeat it for all the pins that are in there. But this one, I already, rather than go through that process, I already know what it is, so I'll go ahead and set the rotations on all of them, and go from there, just to save some time. But the first time I picked it, I had to go through and do that kind of testing. And when you're letting off tension to let the pins drop, you might drop some of the top pins and have to set those again. So it can be quite an iterative process until you figure out, especially if you're picking like a combi that has all 5 pins populated, right? It can be quite an iterative process. So we'll go ahead and set those to the proper rotation, and now I'm going to lift them to proper heights. And I just lift them until I feel them hit drop into a gate, and then they can't move anymore. So there we go. I put them in gates, and then I felt a lot of plug rotation. So I believe that sidebar is probably set, and I can go back to jiggle testing the top. I'm going to start from the back. I find it easier starting from the back when I was working on this just now. So usually I start from the front, but all right. So pin 6 is binding. It feels like getting some counter rotation, and now it's jiggly. 6, 5 is jiggly. 4, when I touched it, I dropped further into a false set. So I'm probably moving up the smooth part of the spool, that means. So I'm guessing this is going to be our next binder. Indeed, it's binding. I'm getting counter rotation when I push on it. There, got a click out of it. I'll go back and see if I dropped 6 in that process. Because 6 was the last one I set before that. No, 6 still jiggling, and I don't feel counter rotation on it. A lot of times, like if you're using gins, they'll drop into the countermilling in the plug, and you'll have to use a second tensioner to manually counter rotate it to set it. But a lot of times with these sidebars, the sidebar will provide you the counter rotation. So if you just let off tension a little, you'll get counter rotation. So there, I get counter rotation off of, I think this is pin 3. I could be wrong, but it doesn't really matter. It's just the one that's binding. And now it's loose, but I didn't drop into false set. So that means I probably dropped 6 or 4 down a little bit. So I'm going to go back towards the back and make sure that those are set. All right, there was 4 I touched, and it dropped deep into the false set again. Now I'm going to go back and make sure I didn't drop 6, which I probably did. Indeed. Oops. Hard to stay on it a little bit. I'm not used to using these rounded picks. I'm used to using flat picks, and I find it easier to stay on the pins with the flat picks, but some people say that the rounded picks help them find the actual pins easier. All right, so 4 is another little click out of it, so I'm going to go check 6 again. It seems that when I set 4, it drops 6, but no, 6 seems to be jiggling. 5 jiggling. 4 jiggling. I slipped off of 3. That's the thing. I find it hard to. All right, click out of 3. Drop more into false set. I find it hard to stay on the pins with the rounded one. 2, counter rotation. Click out of 2. Jiggling. 1. 1 little counter rotation, and we're open. So basically just going through, feeling for the binders. Don't touch the ones that are wiggling, and set them through. So let's take a look inside, especially at those tree drivers that we have. Let's turn on the autofocus. Lock that guy back up. Get our key. Move that a little bit out the way. So some gutting tools I have prepared over here. Bring them in. First things first, screwdriver. Remove these screws off the back. Now the nice thing about this particular one, I believe it sent over from Sweden, has a a top bar here. If you have a flathead screwdriver, you can screw that out and gain access to chambers at the top there, and then you could gut it from the spring side. Now I'll show you something in a moment where that can come in particularly useful. Some people, they'll replace the top with grub screws, so they can do that in case they brick their lock while gutting. And I'll show you one way that you might break the lock while gutting. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this process. So we're going to use the key, and that's going to lift all these pins to the shear line, right, allowing the plug to come out. And what we'll do is we'll drop a shim in here, and this is going to reduce the chance of you bricking anything. Since everything's at the shear line, this will be clear to fit between the plug and those driver pins, right? So I can feel click, 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 all the way to the front. So now there's this shim between letting those drivers drop into any holes that might be in the plug. Follower to keep those in place. And one of the things while pushing out, you're going to have a sidebar, so you're going to want to grab that with your thumb and not let it fly out with its springs. There we go. Now one of the things is that you can see that on this lock, there's this anti-drill chamber here, and the driver might drop into there, and you can't push up on that, so you're going to be bricked at that point, in which case you can remove from the spring side and get that driver out the way. Also, there's this little hole here. I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe I was thinking construction bitting, but it's off center with where a construction pin would fall in, so I'm not sure. So anyways, let's go ahead and take this sidebar out. So looking at the sidebar, we can see it's just all uniform. Now some sidebars have different height gates on them, in which case the sidebar is keyed to your key and it sets the bitting. But in this case, with all the same height sidebar pieces, it means that the pins are different in here. In the ones where the gates are on the sidebar, the pins will all be the same, but in this one, the pins are going to be what sets the bitting to the key. So there are two springs in here. Sorry if that's noisy trying to get these out. So there's two little springs here that push the sidebar out and give us some nice little counter rotation as a benefit. I'm not going to take the key out because these, you can see 3 side pins are spring loaded. You can see there are 2 empty chambers. You could probably populate with more pins. It would be nice to do. And we'll go ahead and remove these. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so 2 fell here. It looks like there is some mastering in some of these chambers. Looks like maybe 3 of them. So these are the key pins. This is what determines the height of the key. And then when we take the key out, we want to make sure that we don't eject these. So I'm going to put my thumb under it and pull that out. And you can see now they're being ejected. So in the first one there, you can see it has serrations on the pin, and that's what makes it difficult to rotate it into place unless you let off a lot of your tension. Second one, and the height of these cuts will determine how high you have to lift it. And the last one is in the 5th chamber, and then there's 3 springs in there. Okay. Put these up here. Get this out the way. Then we can see on this plug there are countermilling. So let's see, I tensioned it this way, so that means that the pins would be pushing against here, and you can see that really catches the pick under these. And there's no countermilling on number 3. You can see the pick just comes out. But on the other 5 chambers, there's countermilling. You could almost, if you keep the plug this way, it would lift it up, but it's gonna fall out. And I'll show you how the trees interact with those in a second. So we'll get this shim out the way here, and take these tree drivers out here. Now you want to make sure that when you rebuild this, that you put the trees in this orientation, okay, where this spool part is going to interact with the plug to point towards the key pin. We'll see that a bit better on some of the longer ones. So these ones are kind of short. So that's 2, 3, and 4 is all the way here. There's a 4th one. That 4th one's a bit longer. So if we look, no, actually I'll take them all out first. I'm going to go from the other side so we can get a better look as they come out. So this is going to be pin 6. There we go, pin 6. And finally, pin 5. There's pin 5. Okay. All of these just have the same spring. There's no mix of springs there. So put these in, then we'll take a look at one of those tree drivers. So if you put one of these in backwards, right, you'll just have this flat area interacting with the plug, and so you'll lose all the benefits of it'll just be like a standard pin. You'll lose all the benefits you have there of having a security driver. But if you look at the rest of it, the first part, you might be sitting here, you drop into the spool area, and then you're going to push up on the pin. It's upside down right now, and you're going to hit this lip, and that's where you're going to have to counter rotate to get out, and then you're going to drop into this area. Then you're going to push, and you're going to get caught on this lip. It's another spool lip, right? You're going to push out, and then get past that. Now each of these lips are going to catch on the countermilling in the plug, like that, making it hard to push up. You're not going to be able to push up on it unless you counter rotate that to allow this to come out. So that's the security feature there. And yeah, that's it. So that is the ASSA Twin Combi 4800 with 6 trees, only 3 side pins. Thanks everyone. Bye.